This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by Sterling Roastery. When the morning's turning colder, there is no better way to start your day than with a cup of coffee brewed with fresh roasted beans from Sterling Roastery. With the same care and dedication they take with their soap, the Sterling folks roast their beans sourced from around the world with great care and expertise. Check out their full line of beans at sterlingsoap.com. And right now, you can win one of 3 $50 Sterling Roastery gift cards. Use it for yourself or as a gift to a friend. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways to enter today. That's sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways for your chance to win a Sterling Roastery gift card. And welcome back to another edition of This Day in Sports History. I am your host, Steve White, ready to take you up and down the sports history timeline today. It is November 22nd, and it seems like on this day we had the best of times, and we also had the worst of times. The stories today could easily be written into a Dickensian tale, with stark contrasts between the haves and the have-nots, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. Let's start with what happened on this day in Ann Arbor in 1975. So, as a general rule, football coaches are a paranoid bunch. I don't think they start out that way, but over time, the pressure builds. First from the media, and then you got the fans, and then the administration, right? All that pressure kind of builds up over time, making coaches, especially successful ones, become more insular. Their inner circle is the size of a pinhead. Well, on this day in 1975, it was year 7 of the 10-year war between Michigan's Bo Schembechler and Ohio State's Woody Hayes. The Buckeyes had won 2 of the last 3 in this series with 1 tie. But before I get to the game, this game is also known for what happened in the lead-up to it. And this gets back to the coach's paranoia idea. Michigan was on the practice field going through the typical drills in preparation for the Ohio State game in the days leading up to this one. Schembechler had closed off practices to the media, just as Woody Hayes had done in Columbus. Bo had spotters stationed around the practice field with their eyes turned outward, looking for any sort of guy with a pen and a pad or a photographer with his lens pointed at the field. Well, 2 assistants noticed Andy Sachs soon after he'd walked out onto the second-floor balcony of the South Street Apartments with his camera, his 500mm lens, and his tripod. The spotters didn't know who this guy was, and they really didn't care. Neither did Schembechler. But Sachs was not a spy sent on a mission by Hayes. Instead, he worked for United Press International, and he just needed a shot of Bo with his freshman quarterback, Rick Leach. That was his assignment. Well, when Bo was alerted about the photographer on the balcony, he pulled his entire team off the field and told them to follow him. Bo and the Wolverines walked across the street, entered the building, went to the second floor, knocked on the door of the apartment, and confronted Sachs, demanding the film from the camera. Sachs pleaded that there was a mistake. "You call my editor. He'll tell you I'm on an assignment, coach." It didn't matter. The Ann Arbor police were called, and they confiscated Sachs' camera gear. They escorted him off the property and told him that he could get his stuff back once the game kicked off on Saturday. While no pictures made the paper, the story did, and it went national. Now, on the other side, on Friday night, the Buckeyes had arrived in Ann Arbor for the game. At the hotel where they were staying, the team had its usual team dinner. Well, as soon as meals began to be served, Hayes stood up and he stopped everything. He screamed, "All the women out!" Hayes was convinced that Schembechler had hired beautiful women to serve dinner so as to distract his players. He allowed only men to serve dinner that night. So, with Paranoia as the backdrop, this game kicked off at noon at Michigan Stadium on this day. The Buckeyes were unbeaten at 9-0 and the #1 team in the country. Michigan started off the season ranked number 2, but after back-to-back ties early on in the season, they'd fallen to number 12, but after 7 straight wins, had worked their way back to the 4th-ranked team in the country to set up another classic battle in this 10-year war. Another record crowd of 105,543 was on hand for this one. Ohio State started the game with a methodical 15-play, 63-yard drive to score the first points. Now, Woody had not exactly had a complete change of philosophy. He was still a run-first kind of guy, but with quarterback Cornelius Green, he'd embraced the pass a bit more. Green found Pete Johnson for a 7-yard strike, and it was 7-0 Buckeyes. In the second quarter, Sachs, the UPI photographer, had an epiphany. He understood why Bo had been so secretive and reacted to his presence earlier in the week. Schembechler had a trick play on his call sheet, and he used it for the first Wolverine touchdown. It was a shock to a lot of people, least of which was Michigan play-by-play man Bob Ufer, who was not only surprised, but he gave a complete history on the last time he'd seen it.
Wide to the right now is Jimmy Smith. 2 tight ends in a balanced line. Gordy Bell is going out to the right, and he's going to throw a pass, and it's down there to Smith. He catches a touchdown! Touchdown! And it is caught by Gordy Bell, and that's the first time in 11 years that Michigan's tailback has thrown a touchdown pass. It was Rick Seeger throwing to Johnny Henderson up at Michigan State in 1964.
That tied it at 7, and it stayed that way into the fourth quarter until Michigan quarterback Rick Leach went in from a yard out to give Michigan the lead with just over 7 minutes to play. Now, the Wolverine defense had been stout all throughout this one. They did not allow a Buckeye first down for the majority of the second quarter, all of the third, and most of the fourth. At the end of the day, they would allow the reigning Heisman winner, Archie Griffin, to gain only 46 yards on the ground, breaking his 31-game streak of 100-yard games. Instead, it would be his brother Ray who would come up with the big play in this one. Ohio State embarked on an 80-yard drive that started with a passing barrage and ended in true Woody Hayes fashion, powering the fullback up the middle on 3 successive plays to score from a yard out. Hayes then faced a decision: kick for the tie or go for 2 and the lead. Woody knew the odds. A tie would hurt Michigan more than his Buckeyes. Plus, he figured a tie would also force the Wolverines into passing on their next drive. So, he kicked the PAT 14-14 with 3 minutes 20 seconds left. Here's Schembechler talking about that moment and the decision his Wolverines faced.
It was a decision that we had to make, whether we were going to play it conservatively or whether we would take our chances and try to pull it out. And we had decided going into the game that we would play to win regardless. And because a tie wouldn't have helped us in this game except for another co-championship, and frankly, we wanted more than that.
Hayes' crystal ball forecasting paid off. Facing a 3rd and 18, Michigan quarterback Rick Leach airmailed a pass over Jimmy Smith's head.
Leach is 3rd and 19 on his 11, drops back to his 3, throws on the run upfield. It is picked off. Archie Griffin's brother Ray to 15 at 10. The foul. He's knocked out of bounds on the play. Little brother Ray Griffin brandishes the football, hugged in the end zone. He picked the ball up on the 40 and ran it all the way back to the 3, and they just mauled him in the end zone. Ray Griffin, Archie's little brother, has maybe snatched a certain tie or victory from defeat, and now the Buckeyes will have it first and goal on the 3.
Pete Johnson scored for the 3rd time that day to give Ohio State the 21-14 lead. Another Leach interception followed, and the Buckeyes, scoring twice in the final 3.5 minutes, beat that school up north for the 3rd time in 4 years. It seems kind of weird to go from that excitement to one of the most boring games in college football history. But such is the nature of this podcast, to make drastic pendulum swings from the best to the worst. Well, on this day in 2014, Wake Forest and Virginia Tech met in Winston-Salem on the football field. The gray sky and the drizzling rain throughout was about as good a backdrop for this game as you could paint. Both the Deeks and the Hokies were ready to put postage stamps on their seasons and mail them in. Wake Forest was on a 7-game losing streak coming in, and Virginia Tech had lost 3 of their previous 4. This game was a punt fest. The two combined for 18 punts throughout regulation. Wake Forest's kicker Mike Weaver missed 4 field goals in regulation, including one that would have won it at the end of it. That led to the infamous meme of Hokies coach Frank Beamer celebrating a 0-0 tie with arms raised and a smile on his face. But of course, a college football game cannot end in a tie now, so to overtime we went. Things did not get much better in OT. Between the two, they ran 18 plays in OT, and they combined to gain all of 9 yards. The teams exchanged field goals in the first OT, And then Weaver redeemed himself with the game winner in the second overtime to give Wake Forest the 6-3 win. Now, one of the things that may have led to this stalemate came to light a few years later when it was revealed that a Wake Forest radio analyst, Tommy Elrod, had given Virginia Tech coach Shane Beamer inside information on Wake's game plan. Well, from that pathetic scoring affair to another one. On this day in 1950, it was the lowest scoring NBA game in history. The Fort Wayne Pistons head coach Murray Mendenhall didn't feel like his team could match up and run the floor with the defending champion Minneapolis Lakers, with the original big man George Mikan in the middle. The Lakers were also pretty tough at home, winning 29 straight coming into this one. So Mendenhall decided to do something a little bit different. Stall ball. In an era before the shot clock, there was absolutely no incentive to shoot. So why not? The Pistons led 8-7 after the first quarter. The Lakers fought back to take a 13-11 lead at the half. The Pistons cranked up the defense and also slowed things down even more, allowing only 5 second-half points. When Fort Wayne's Larry Faust hit the go-ahead bucket with 6 seconds left, it was all the Pistons needed to wrap up the 19-18 win. After the game, Lakers coach Johnny Cunliffe was not happy, saying, "Play like that will kill professional basketball." The 37 points is the lowest total in the NBA, and that will thankfully never be broken. Another record set on that night that will not be broken is Mikan scoring 15 of the Lakers' 18 points. That's 83% of his team's total. So here's the thing. This was more an aberration than a regular occurrence in the NBA at that point. Fort Wayne had scored 84 in a 4-point win a few nights earlier. They had not played a game where they scored less than 68 points so far that season, and even scored 107 in the season opener versus Boston. Add to that these two teams turned around and played each other again the next night, this time in Fort Wayne, and the Pistons won that one too, but by a dramatically different score of 73-63. But there was concern in the league office about a repeat of scores like 1918 and draining support for the league. So this game put gears in motion towards improving it. Now, those gears moved a little slower than they should have, but as I talked about a few weeks ago, the innovation of the 24-second shot clock would be instituted 4 years later. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. When Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle, his initial intention was to influence better labor laws and force better working conditions for the Chicago-based meat packers. Instead, it led to changes in sanitation and meat handling. Not a bad thing, but not exactly what Sinclair was shooting for originally. That's all I've got for you today. Come on back tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.